Welcome to the Maker's Playbook, the podcast where we talk all about what it's really like to make a living from the things you make. I'm your host, Rebecca Ikes-Kara. At a time when we are presented once again with the many ways in which the world is, for lack of a better word, unsettled, to put it mildly, it feels only fitting to shine a light on the makers who are working to build safe, inclusive, equitable communities. I had queued up this week's interview with Fee of Fee's Pottery for this week anyway, and it's pretty incredible how the airing of these episodes continue to land at seemingly pretty ideal times. As a systems-oriented, obsessive planner, as many of you already know, I wish I could take the credit for it. But sometimes there's just synchronicity floating out there when you're doing the right work. On this week's episode, Fee and I virtually sit down to talk about how they are building a community-focused studio that provides access to resources for artists from not only a wide background, but an equally wide socioeconomic standing. We dig into Fee's philosophy on revenue sharing and how a traditional business model might actually help you bring about the change you seek in the world faster than a nonprofit structure. Also, a quick heads up. If you've been around the podcast or my Instagram for a little while, then you probably know I get pretty fired up around social justice topics. And so does Fee. And given that we are both 30-something adults, our language reflects that a bit in this episode. If you have little ones around, I'd maybe suggest grabbing some headphones. Or pause this episode and come back to it when you're on your own. All right, let's dig in. Hey, Fee, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I wish everybody could actually see us on video because I said this when we first started, but your studio just looks so bright and happy and wonderful. I have not seen a better painted studio.
Screenshot it for the masses.
I should. I'm going to totally do it now that you said it. That's going to happen. Smile! I love it. Okay, anyway, for people who don't know you, before we dive deep into the world of pottery and self-employment and all those things, who are you? How did you come into having this beautifully painted ceramic studio?
I'm a nobody. I'm a nobody. I have been saving up getting free stuff off Craigslist for years, building up the studio space. I started teaching a few years ago, and that brought in more income than I ever expected. And it was enough to buy more wheels and make teaching a bigger core part of my life. Yeah. So with that goal in mind, my tiny garage turned into this giant pottery studio. And we have over 75 people come through when there are classes. And I'm the kiln tech, I'm the studio manager, I'm the potter, I'm the teacher. But what I'm really excited about is that I was able to get other teachers in, and we have 4 people taking over 4 of the classes now that I don't have to personally attend.
You're literally living the dream.
It's so cool. And something that I'm doing differently is just taking a small... You know how, when a hairstylist rents a chair at a salon, you have, a small rent fee, which is just, basically to keep the lights on so you can charge your things, I'm trying to make as much of the income that's coming in from the students go to my instructors as possible. So I'm proud to say they're working for $66 an hour as art instructors.
I mean, that's better than what I pay myself. Shit.
It's better than what I pay myself too. Right. But it's it's the balance. I have my basic needs accounted for. I have a happy, stable life. I can forego a little bit of extra income if it makes my peers stronger in the community and makes them feel like they're a bigger part of a bigger thing. And that's what we're here for.
This is exactly, I didn't tell you this ahead of time, but this is exactly why I reached out to you to talk on the podcast, because
Oh,
it has
really?
been so apparent to me just from watching your Instagram that you have such a passion for creating community, especially like not just having a space to come learn pottery because you love playing in mud, but like there is such a, nobody can see me flapping my hands around here. Like, there's such an ethos to, there's something more there to me than just like, ooh, wheel throwing. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it starts there. That's
Mm-hmm.
the seed, that's our hook.
Yeah.
So if you love pottery, it's just a bonus to step into a space where you're not going to be, looked down upon for being new or a beginner, and you're not going to be treated differently than someone who has been here for 4 years. And it's going to feel like as much your environment as it is mine, because
Yeah.
we're building the environment together.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Well, take us back a little bit before you got to this phase of it all.
Mm.
How did you first get started in ceramics? Like, was this something you always wanted to do, or?
Well, at the end of high school, I had already taken too many credits. Like I was a band geek. I took all the AP and honors classes. What did you play?
I was an oboist. It's how I paid for college.
Alto sax.
Yes.
Yeah.
The supreme band nerd. A double reed is like.
I mean, yes, you double readers.
Yeah.
I got
It's okay.
one read and I sound like a duck, so.
I also sound like a duck now. I mean, I don't know. I haven't touched my oboe in years, which is kind of sad, but I digress.
When you're on that route in high school and you take all your electives as extra classes, basically, like I didn't have to work that hard, but I'm glad I did. Young me was very school is everything kind of person. But by the end of high school, I had all these open things because I took every class there was to take. There was no more.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll try this pottery class. And I just didn't turn back. I sat down, I centered for 8 hours and my hands were bleeding and I was like, I'm gonna fucking get this, I didn't understand why it was so hard. And then once I kind of started figuring it out, I realized that there's always going to be stuff to figure out. I didn't feel judged by it. It actually made me feel happy to know that there is something that I can always look back on and reference, like where my movement is. And I love seeing that trajectory for myself and for other people, which is part of why I love teaching.
That's amazing. So that was like senior year of high school, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's so funny how things happen like at the crux of right when something's supposed to shift, isn't it? I feel like that happens more often than not in life. Like
especially for people who procrastinate. That's how it always has to happen. I'm just
okay. Well, that's a different situation. It's a totally different situation.
Sure.
But truly, I mean, the only art class I took in high school, because same situation as you, like my schedule was always full. Like I had band, I had French, I had all the AP classes. So you didn't have a gap for an extracurricular, right? Like there was no extra, like people sitting there trying to decide, oh, am I going to take this class or that class? I'm like, my schedule's set for like the next 4 years.
Yeah.
But senior year was the one time I took let's call it, obviously the music is an art, but a visual art class was one class, one semester senior year. And I learned about Modrian and my life has been ruined ever since. Because once you learn about design and well-balanced things, you can't just put furniture in a room like a normal human being. No.
Oh, no. Yeah. Things have to be a way.
There has to be a flow. There has to be balance. It has to move within the space.
Yeah, it's got to function for the humans that use that space.
Oh, man. No, it has to have the flow for... No. Well, so what happened after? So you discover clay senior year of high school, and then where do we go from there? And
I moved to Seattle to go to UW, and I didn't have enough money to continue at UW after a couple of years, even though with all my, extra AP credits and everything. I did get
shocker, that
into the
story never happens.
department like super early on. Maybe
Mhm.
my first year, they admitted me into the program, even though there's 2 years of prerequisites for it,
Okay.
just because I had college credits from taking Running Start classes.
Yep.
And I worked in the art advising office. That was like the weirdest, awesomest job because it felt so weird. Because you get to control who gets to be in what classes. The classes were in such high demand that
Right.
if you didn't come to the office and were like, I'm serious about getting in this course,
Right.
whatever it was, fibers, pottery one, ceramics 101, you did not get into the class.
Oh my gosh.
There's no way.
And also, like, if you don't know that, like, once I find that out, I'm sitting my ass in front of that office every single morning before they open. But, like, how are you supposed to know that?
Nobody knows that, especially people who aren't even in the art department. So a lot of people, like business folks or math folks or science folks, they're like, oh, pottery, I did it in high school. I want to take a ceramics class. And then they find out if you want to take ceramics 101, you have to take intro to 3D, you have to take drawing, you have to take painting, you have to take, like 2 years worth of classes.
Right.
So even though I was in the program, it wasn't enough for me to stay in the program. I had bills. I was a I live in poverty, like a poor student who had a scholarship in the first year, but not after that, and financial aid jobs, everything. I did everything. And I still had 2 jobs outside of college, so I had to go do my job to have a place to live. So that was my end of my school. But it's interesting to me that like nobody ever reached out to be like, where did Fee go? I think it's just telling of the whole system that not a single professor was like, oh, my person who's in my program disappeared.
Right. My super involved student who was like very active and did the work. No, okay, question.
Yeah, I don't know if they saw it that way, but it's hard to know what people are thinking when you're one of the only people of color in the program. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I never really figured it out, but I knew that I wanted to continue doing ceramics and clay and learning because I knew it was a part of me. So even though I wasn't in school for it anymore, I bought a wheel. Even though I had a small 400 square foot studio apartment with like fixed rent in downtown Seattle, I'm like, yes, low income housing. I had a tiny corner of that apartment that was basically the kitchen and the sink area, like a little patch of linoleum that I would throw on and make work and walk my stuff to get fired at the pottery supply.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. This is before we moved to this house, we had a condo in Chicago, and because of COVID and all of that kind of stuff, studio keeps closing. We set up our kitchen looked like a scene from Dexter, right? Like we had plastic over everything. But that was not a big condo, but that was like almost 1,000 square feet. And even then trying to like clean up everything enough to then cook, to not like, to just have like a hygienic meal. Like I can't even imagine.
There's so much cleaning. But the thing is, because it was smaller, there was less place for the dust to go. Like once you were clean with that 400 square feet, it's done. 1,000 square feet, you have to clean it every time, like all 1,000 square feet.
Yep.
So I hear a lot of times people are like, what do I need to have my own studio at home? Now, if they're here local in Tacoma, I'm like, all you need at home is some shelves, a few buckets, a wheel if you're going to wheel throw, or a table if you're going to hand build. That's all you need.
Wasn't it?
Because all you need to do is bring your stuff here to fire. I just like, why get your own kiln? Why pay for the electrical? Like, literally bring it to my studio. I'll fire it for you.
Well, and also when something breaks and you don't know how to fix it, and you lose 3 days because you're Googling and testing out different things. If you're not a kiln whiz, like come to Fee.
Yeah, totally.
Well, wasn't it? I think it was Brian Hopkins who recently on Instagram did like a story or whatever about somebody who said it costs a bare minimum of like 15 grand to get a studio up and running. And he was like, no, it doesn't. If you want to buy brand new things all the time, but
Even if you bought all brand new things, it does not cost $15,000.
right. Well,
Literally look at the prices of things. That's a lie.
and it's like most people don't have that luxury. Most people aren't going out. Most people, if you want to make this a business and a livelihood, most people aren't going out the gate getting like the brand spanking new whatever, Shimpo, Scott, insert whatever brand you want to insert, right? Like you make it work for a long time. You make it work even when you're full time. I mean, shit. Even then, you have to make it work more.
You only have a tiny kitchen to work out of.
I love it.
Yeah, I think that Brian's post is very interesting because it kind of shows different, I don't know, class levels, right? Like we have so many kinds of people working in clay, and it matters how well how affluent you are in your income. If I had to still, I don't know, live paycheck to paycheck like I was doing before, I wouldn't be able to offer this kind of space to other people. I would be the one needing the offered space. So having that perspective, I will always offer space to people. That is like, I can't imagine myself being like, no, we're done. Like no more folks in my space. We're done. That's not me.
I think the other point that brings up too, and I'm putting my own story on this now. So by all means, chime in, flip the script, whatever. But the thing I realized being self-employed was in being able to provide that space for people, in being able to do the good that you want to do in the world. I could only do that when I started charging what I needed to charge.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
Because when I was undercharging my services and my work, I couldn't take a half day off to go volunteer with an organization that I believed in because I had to say yes to every single job that came through the door to pay the bills.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of growing as a small business owner is learning when a yes is a good yes. When you say it and you're like, that's actually what I want to do and that's where I want to spend my time. Because even if it's not a thing that's going to bring you business income, it elevates you. It brings you some sort of lesson or perspective or just like a way to step outside of your normal expectations. That is a good yes. But if you're going out there and you're just like, okay, $50, $50, $50, $50, you don't have enough hours in your day to get enough $50 to make it work for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, so you're in Tacoma now, you're in your own studio in the garage at home now, which is amazing. How did that kind of grow? Was the goal, to me sounds like, I'm going to assume, considering you were committed inside the 400 square feet to make pottery, the goal was always to have a home studio. Walk us through that kind of trajectory a little bit.
Yeah. Even when I was still renting in Seattle and dealing with renter versus landlord, like don't want to step on your toes. I want to be a good, not necessarily that I want to be a good renter, but I don't want to get kicked out.
Right.
Right? Like being a good renter, moral quandary. But I wanted to make sure that what I was doing wasn't going to make the landlord angry.
Yeah,
right?
Put you at risk.
So I had a cool one for my last place that I lived. He gave me a rent price that was just a portion of the mortgage payment. And it wasn't extra. It wasn't like he was making money off of me. And because of that setup, for 4 years, I was able to save money, even from pottery money. It wasn't even like a salary job or whatever. I was like selling pots at Pike Place Market, and I was able to save up money from that enough to buy my first extra wheels so that I could consider teaching.
So teaching was like in the cards early on.
Just because I like explaining things. I never thought I would follow the route. I never thought I would be like, now I'm a teacher. And this next teaching session, my first time in like 2 years where I've taught less than 5 days a week. Yeah. So now I went from, I think I'm going to be a teacher to I am so a teacher.
Yeah. Now I am a teacher.
Now I am a teacher. Now I'm like stepping it back a little bit because I'm also a game show designer. I'm also but it's all pottery related. I love food. Like I want to do other stuff. And like you were saying, if I was saying yes to every small project that came my way to do small business hustle, I wouldn't be here because I had to say no to a lot of things to find my space to do what I wanted to do.
Oh, amen to that. I want to talk about so much more, but that's just like mic drop, done, over, bye. Okay. I mean, I'm 11 years in and I'm still sitting in that, right? I am the overcommitment queen.
Yep.
And it's hard when you do genuinely get excited about things too. There are yeses that you want to say because you would really want to do something, but the biggest thing that, the whole great pause COVID taught me was like getting even better at looking at my long-term schedule, not looking at my like week schedule or my day schedule or even my month schedule, but looking at like my quarterly and my annual schedule to be like, if I want to do these things and these things move the big goals forward, here's how much time that's going to take me. Here's how much time is left over. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the inspiring people in my life is my mother-in-law, who was a professor for a long time. She recently retired, but she had this amazing goal-setting kind of theory. And it's just like, look ahead, like you were saying, to what you want to do. And then in the time that you have left, break it down into the little steps that you need to climb up to reach that goal. All that information is like secondary. The power is finding the goal that you really want to work towards, because whatever you come up with is going to be the most motivation for you to actually succeed in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the hardest thing about that too is that the big goal, the stuff you have to do to accomplish the big goals usually aren't urgent.
No, and they're small everyday thing. It could be like building a habit for 15 minutes a day until the day of the thing that you need to do. And then like now you've put hours and hours and hours into this, and you can be confident in completing your task. It took that many days, but really it's not an entire day every day before that. It's just moments of those days.
Yep.
If it's hard for folks to kind of separate that idea, just know a professional potter isn't working 12 hours a day in their studio dreaming up new pots. They have...
Don't we all wish?
I mean, I wish I could, but I'm not 18 anymore. I'm 35 this year. I'm feeling my age, my body is different. I work really well for 3 to 6 hours in the studio, and then I have to do other stuff. And when I remind myself of that, I remember to do life stuff like the dishes and the vacuuming. I have 2 husky dogs. Like, there's too much fur. But if you are beating yourself up for not following this like fantastical fictional schedule that you assume every successful, whatever that means to you, role model you see in the world on Instagram, on the internet, that's not true. It's not real. And if you want to prove it to yourself, send that person a direct message and ask them how much time do they actually spend in the studio. It will surprise you.
And I think also that's a great point as far as the myth of how you spend your time when we are self-employed and full-time.
Yeah.
Right? People... I always feel like I'm a bit of a like that the podcast is a bit of a downer of like, let me tell you what it's really like, guys. wouldn't change the autonomy of it for the world. But the majority of my time is not spent in a craft. And that's what I think people who are like, oh my gosh, I just want to quit my full-time job and I want to be a full-time potter. It doesn't mean you're spending 8 hours with your hands in mud necessarily.
It does if you have somebody else running your books, your studio, your firings, mixing up your glazes, doing your Instagram, making sure enough people see your stuff so that they buy the work that you're actually making. There's so much in the way. And I feel like when you put the business label on it, you give yourself a false sense of what justifies a good small business owner. And I feel like more people would not hesitate as much to be a small business owner if they realize everything is what you make it.
Mm.
You can do business your own way. You don't have to do the things. There's no real customer service standard. You don't want to be an asshole to your customers, yes, but you can tell your customers to back the fuck off if they're being too much. You can also tell people like, hey, I'm not Amazon. An order from me comes from my hands and my body and gets packed by my hands and my body and gets sent to you. You can wait some time for a completed object. And if you can't, here's your money back. People hate that. It's not a good business practice per se, according to general practices, but I do not hesitate sending a refund and saying goodbye to someone who is trying to get my attention and trying to get some sort of emotional response from me instead of understanding that I am trying my best to provide them this one-of-a-kind, handmade, from the heart object.
Yeah.
So it's really cool as I've built my confidence as a teacher, as a business owner, to understand that the world is so big and you don't have to say that every customer is right. You just have to treat your people right. And if you're doing that, then you're doing okay.
And I had somebody once point out, a client of mine point out that like they purposely sought out bad reviews before they hired like me as a photographer or any photographer. Not because they were trying to like, see what's really going on or something like that, but because they just wanted to see how the business handled it. That's it. And it flipped the script for me on that fear of like, oh my God, I can't disappoint somebody. Oh my God, I can't get a bad review. Because I think, especially in the world of Etsy and Google Review and Yelp and all of these things that we live in, small business owners so often live in that fear of, oh my God, I can't get a bad review. When really, it's bound to happen. Communication problems happen. You learn from them. You get better for them. And when it does happen, it's more of an opportunity for you to show your people in the future that they're your people. And that like, hey, something went wrong and this is how this company handled it. I now trust them. I'm going to go hire them or buy from them or whatever.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point. It's like, I really am drawn to different kinds of conflict resolution. And part of my, I don't know, like I wanted to do a business. I wanted to do a nonprofit. I wanted to do, like trying to figure out where my lane is. Mm-hmm. And I found that after this year of working in business, the only thing that would change if I switched over to nonprofit in my day to day would be just like writing down everything that that I would spend or whatever. It's just more documentation. Yeah. But what I found too is that if you have an intention and you want to bring about a certain change in the world, having a nonprofit might not be the best way to go to do that. Because when you are your own business owner, I see you laughing. It's real. When you are a small business owner and you think of something to do, you're not bound by these strange laws that are really protecting taxes in the guise of being what's the word? I hate the word philanthropic, like in the guise of like doing good and having a community when I never have been to a community function where someone's like, I'm a nonprofit representative here to be in the community. No. Right. No. People who work in nonprofits are pissed.
Exhausted.
and exploited. It's one of the industries. It's an industry. It's like a weird kind of business because they don't say it's business, but it's filed as a corporation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I worked for nonprofits before I started my business. And it was funny because like my dad would be concerned, right, that you weren't going to make any money. And I'm like, no. Like people still make money. Like the CEO of the nonprofit I worked for was on Wacker Drive in downtown Chicago, like the office, which is in the heart of like some of the most expensive real estate in the country. And I can proudly say I know like the dollar for dollar as far as when people donated something, how many cents per dollar actually go to the direct service. And we were in the 90 cents range. And so like
Ooh, that's really good.
a very well-run nonprofit.
Yeah.
But still, the CEO was doing just fine for herself. Like we were doing good work. I like what you're saying, and I'm going to get much clearer now instead of my rambling, thinking about this and my dad's comments. Is this is why I love social enterprises, right? Because also they're a business, so they generate their own income, they generate their own profit, but they have the mission and the heart and the soul of the nonprofit, right? Like I think that's, whereas if you're a legal nonprofit, there's so many lines you have to walk, I guess, is the mixed metaphor I'm using, to make sure that you stay within whatever tax bubble, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a business, yeah, like you can have the mission of a nonprofit and just be a business. And in some ways, I think honestly that's going to solve a lot more of the world's problems.
If every business was held to the standard of what we think nonprofits should be, not how they actually are, but how they should be, that's like, if you're not doing your business that way, what are you doing?
That's why people hate business, in my mind. That's why people think sales is a dirty word or marketing is a dirty word, because you're thinking of those businesses that are authentic. I hate to use that.
I mean, nonprofits are the same, girl. Nonprofits are the same. Like if you have that critical eye for businesses, turn it onto the nonprofit system, because they are not supposed to be doing that, but they are 100% doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Even more so, depending on free labor, depending on cheap labor, especially for POC. I mean, let's not talk about our salaries and pay people of color a little bit less, right?
Yep. And like we were even saying, there's a search engine that you can go to. It's like a website that gives you the rankings of nonprofits as far as dollar donated versus money towards the direct service that you think you're donating money to. And I don't remember what it is, but do your research, people. Do your research. We'll put a bow on that topic, because I feel like our body language has changed and we're getting all like riled up.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, we're going to talk more about this and change the world with our podcast.
Right? But I mean, that's why I love seeing more people like yourself start business. Like, this is why I started the podcast. There are so many ways to have a business. And I wanted to find out the diverse range of those stories, so that people thinking, oh, I can't be as successful because I'm scared to put my face on Instagram. And everybody tells me I have to put my face on Instagram, and I don't want to do that. Well, go look at Joe at Old Forge. I mean, he's doing all right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
He's got a couple of followers, that's all.
Like we're saying, you can do it how you want to. You just have to find your way to relate to people. If you don't want to be in front of the camera, don't be in front of the camera. Your work can speak for itself, but you also have to have words, the captions. You have to have voice bites. You have to have like your story in there, because people love a good story. That's all there is to it.
And that's going to be the case no matter what you're doing. I mean, that's been true well before Instagram ever existed.
Oh yeah, that's why we have culture. We tell each other stories by the fire. Like,
you mentioned your huskies, and my rescue dog desperately needs his nails trimmed, so this isn't helping, Hendrix. All right. Francesco's throwing a bunch of stuff right now, and I had him in there, so I'm like, okay, you're out now. That's interesting. Oh, I was curious. So now that you're talking about pulling back on the teaching a little bit, telling it, we're talking about how you can have all these different ways of business. So what is kind of an average week as far as how you spend your time, what that looks like when it comes to managing, making, and studio, and teaching, and marketing, and all of this stuff?
Right now it's a bunch of procrastinating on making pots that I owe people. Just a little bit of procrastination. It's cold in the studio. I have lots of excuses to make that last longer. But Right now I'm trying to do 6 hours a day, throwing as much as I can. I really am trying to bust out and finish all my outstanding orders before we work on new projects, right? It's hard to ask for community support if they're like, you owe us a mug.
Like, I would love to support you, but I did already. Thank you.
Yeah, frankly, I sent you money. Yes. So for me, I'm lucky to not have to worry about my business bringing in income that turns into food on my table. I'm taken care of, right? So I'm okay on living necessities.
Is that, and we don't have to go super deep, but just so everybody gets a good perspective, is that like personal relationship, or is that also with the teaching and the community, or how's that kind of balance?
That's just because I'm lucky to have married the person that I married.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's very supportive, and he understands that my focus is to not keep money for myself. So there's no expectation from my business to put dollars in our bank account, basically. But at the end of the month, if there's like $100, I'm like, wow, I can put that in a savings stock account or something. Thank you. So 6 hours a day. And sometimes that overlaps with the free studio drop-in time that I provide for people of color. So I do 11 to 2 Monday through Thursday and 11 to 2 Saturdays as like free times for people, any person of color, to come in and work in the studio with me, basically. And I act like a studio buddy, like you're my friend. Oh, you need a demo? Okay, here's how to throw really quick, and then you work on your own.
So they don't have to be your current students. Like,
they don't have to be. Nope, they don't have to be a current student, but they can be. So I do have students of color in my regular classes, and they want extra time. Say, like they work from home and they have just one Zoom meeting. They're like, I'm going to come to the studio, do my meeting over here while I'm throwing. Is that okay? I'm like, yes. Please do that. That is the best thing I've ever heard of. Like, that's awesome. So cool. I'm working on a big new project. I'm trying to do a game show, basically. It's like a art challenge show like you would see on Netflix, but for pottery. And the whole idea is that no one gets eliminated, and everybody who's participating works on all the projects, but there's still a winner, and there's a grand prize of $5,000.
So it's like, it's basically, minus not having an elimination. This is why I watch all the British reality shows, because everyone's so pleasant.
Yeah. We're going to be as nice and pleasant as possible, but also like really push each other to try new things, to talk about things that we don't normally talk about. Like it's going to be this is how we actually need to be in the studio to get real art made together.
Yes. Matt Katz and I were talking about like how what boggles my mind with ceramics is there's so many different aspects of things you need to know. Like you were saying in the very beginning, you're the kiln master, you're the glaze tech, you're the and all of these things are radically different skills than just making a pot in the first place.
Yes, it is.
And somehow Instagram has made us all think that you can like put up your own studio in the basement and become, I don't know, Clary Alien or something.
Well, that's why beginner students of ceramics basically are buying like brand new kilns. Wow. I'm just like, I'm so jealous. Buy me a brand new kiln. I'll teach you how to use it. Yeah, like, wow. I think it's okay to follow your passion. If you have the means to do it, yes. But if you have the means to be like, this is my new hobby, I'm going to buy a brand new kiln, reach out to your local community. Make your space available to other folks. Make it so that it's not just you benefiting from your privilege, because people need access. There's no end to the folks who are waiting to sign up for a class. There's no end to how many folks want to just have space to pressure free, sit down and like come up with something instead of what they normally experience, which is just a bunch of stress sitting at their computer on Zoom, working from home.
What do you kind of wish that people who are getting started in ceramics, whether it just be as a craft or whether it be as a business and things, what do you wish people either thought about or knew or did differently?
New people who want to do a business, you mean? Or just like people who are just learning?
I would say that people kind of who have gotten into it and been like, okay, I'm obsessed. I want this to be my life. How do I make this happen?
Oh, yeah. To those people, congratulations. You've taken on a project that will last your whole life. And now you get to be 10 kinds of careers instead of just one.
That is the most realistic description I could possibly think of.
I was just like, what else can you say? Like when you decide that it's not just I'm learning to do this, I love to do this, it's also going to be your income. Remember that we have all kinds of preconceived notions with just those words, with money, with how we deal with that, with what a sale is, how to feel good about how much you're making, combined with the stress of you're not a professional potter yet, right? Like when you're starting out, we don't all start out as perfect career professionals. You have your aesthetic worked out. You have every technical kink worked out. You have all your supply chains worked out. No, we're not here to make production, really. I think the people who are inspired to start small businesses now see an artist lifestyle. So to be very honest, that artist lifestyle is not just beautiful craft all the time. It's nitty gritty, like, how am I going to get this tool to do this project that I'm working on without breaking the bank? How do I get myself together to this craft market to sell some work when I don't even have work ready for it? Like there's a lot to balance. And what I want those people to do is reach out to other potters in their direct community, in their town, whoever you have as a resource available, and become friends, because you're going to be in it together. And instead of seeing each other as rivals or as business competition, it's never that way. If both of you are thriving, more people can thrive as well, not just you two, right? So you have to make it so that it's an atmosphere of collaboration with your other career-oriented, serious small business folks.
Since you brought up that community aspect, was that something there in the Tacoma area, or did you start this because you felt like it was missing?
I started compiling these thoughts and ideas when I was a baby potter, when I was like, I can just make pots and fire them in my kiln and take them down to Pecos Market and stand there all day and sell everything. It's going to be great. But the more I stood there and the more that the pots didn't sell, even though they're beautiful, like I know they're technically beautiful, they're quality, I spent good time on them, no flaws. You have to judge every part of that yourself when you're a small business owner, because no one else is going to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. If it's not good enough, someone else might be like, it's good. They won't have the heart to tell you this passion project that you're working on, your artwork is actually subpar. It's like technically not there yet, but you have to be that person for yourself. And I feel like over the years, learning to then not be that person for yourself for every project that you encounter afterward is so much work. It's so much work. Yes. So you have to be very careful about your inner self-talk when you're a small business owner. You have to be really careful about how you interact with the work that you're actually making, because I feel like your artwork will take in the energy that you're putting into it. So if you're unhappy and stressed out and don't actually want to make pots today, please don't make pots that day. Please take care of yourself so that you can make a joyful, reverent, happy pot to share. Because even if that pot doesn't sell, it's going to bring you your own joy back to you 1,000-fold. Yep. When it exists there in your space, when it's waiting for the right eyes to see it, to claim it, right? It's going to live with you. So if you can't be proud of the actual work that you're producing, it's hard to then be proud of the way that you communicate with your sales, be proud of communicating your Instagram stories, be proud of all those other things. They all tie together for you.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say, ironically, if you wait and it's something you are happy with and you have a happy memory attached to it, you're probably going to sell it faster. Because, like, the only reason sales is slimy to people, I think, is when you're trying to sell something you don't believe in. As soon as you believe in it, I mean, you can't help but talk about it. And all sales is talking about stuff. Like, that's all it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be like you're convincing someone. You just talk about what's interesting about it. When I was doing the live auctions and I was in front of the camera, it was so hard for me, but it became so popular that I was like, I feel like my people need to see me. Like I can't really stop. So
give the people what they want, fee.
They want to see my dang face being goofy about a pot that's just like giving me feelings. I feel that pressure, and then I've kind of pulled back from it, and I do auctions a little bit differently now. But when I do have the energy to bring to face the camera, I know I can do it because I've done it before. And every time you do something, you get a little bit better at it. It's just like with centering. It's just like with throwing a new shape. You have to take the little steps to your goal. Nothing's going to happen just like that unless you can go back 15 years and be the first person that makes really cool pots on Etsy and then get known for it for the rest of your life.
I was going to say, unless you're a 16-year-old on TikTok.
Yeah, if you're a 16-year-old on TikTok, you're just like passively attractive.
Passively attractive.
If you know your angles, everyone's attractive. If you know your angles.
I just for the record, that's not what I teach in the photography styling course.
Really?
Maybe the angles of your pots. I'm not teaching selfies in this thing.
Oh, okay.
I just need to put that disclaimer out there before I start getting a bunch of messages.
You're like, wait, I can help pose people to look gorgeous? Like, that's not my forte, but...
I do not want to encourage the influencer life, I'm not going to lie. That is,
oh my gosh.
That is not part of the mission statement of the Maker's Playbook.
I think that's so interesting because I feel like there are probably actually good, dedicated influencers who are like, I'm rich, I'm 22 years old, I'm beautiful, but also I'm very passionate about this thing. Yes, I believe in those people. Good for them.
I genuinely enjoy it, and this is how I would spend my time anyway, then cool. You found your niche. Good job.
Yeah. But when they start speaking from such a high level of privilege where they're like unhappy after they arrive at their 5-star like world renowned hotel and they're like, there wasn't a mint on my pillow. You lost me. I can't handle that.
Use the privilege to go get some therapy. Actually, that would be a wise use of resources.
They probably don't think they need therapy because they're so happy.
We've just gone down a dark hole. We've gone to a dark place.
I'm sorry. I'm a little bit judgy of really rich people.
Totally fine.
It comes with the being poor. So
okay. So being frank about this, though, do you think those experiences early on in your life brought you a certain risk tolerance? Because I think that's one of the harder things also being a small business owner is like, I do not have a high level of risk tolerance actually, which is backwards.
To that, yeah, I would say directly that, yeah, I've literally lost everything before. I've like been at a point where there's negative in my bank account and I can't pay my bills and I have rent and I might be kicked out. Like I've been there. It's an awful feeling. It's a disconnected feeling. It's like the world has betrayed you feeling. Like how could just living cost something? There's a lot to it, right? So I'm trying to never forget what it's like to be in that kind of position and to be sensitive to folks who come into my studio or try to be a part of my life who are coming from different places, because you never forget what it's like to be hungry and houseless and not sure what you're even going to do? Not even plan for, but like this moment, like what am I going to even do? How am I going to get out of this? It's hard. It's hard. I mean, my whole family, we're like first generation immigrants. Like we have no roots in this country besides what we've been able to force ourselves to create over the past 30 years that we've been here. I've been here since I was 1 month old, you know? And it's just like, okay, I am an American, but I'm also not. It's hard to become one in the eyes of America. So
maybe you don't want to be one. I'm just gonna just put that option out there for your subconscious to play around with for a little while.
If being an American makes it so I can like use the airport to fly to a city within my own country, I'd rather be an American than not.
Okay, that's
my struggle in my life. There are places I can't go now because they're requiring special IDs and stuff like this that's like backed by birth certificates. I'm a war refugee. I don't fucking have a birth certificate.
Yeah.
How am I ever going to find one? The place that I was born doesn't exist. like that building doesn't exist. It was a temporary hospital.
And there's no digital records either.
Oh my god! No, we didn't have iPhones back then. Just so you know. So I mean, we got a little bit off topic, but what I really want to show folks is that like just because you haven't been poor, just because you don't have that personal struggle, it doesn't mean that you don't have the responsibility to live freely as if you know what the actual cost of being poor is. It's okay. You can be free. It's actually on you to create more free systems so that folks who have to put everything on the line for their passion or for just their job to have other choices, to look out and see that people understand that that's not the only way that we have access to this world. You know, to provide it in every way that you can. So I think that it is a really big internal struggle for sure to be vulnerable, especially about money. No one even wants to talk like a specific dollar amount. That's what I'm talking about here. Like now that I've basically given out my classes to other folks, they're making the money that I was making before. So I have to rebudget my whole life to figure out where that source of income can come from now in order to continue on the trajectory that I'm trying to move towards. It costs money to do all this new projects, all this new stuff. And I don't have a sugar daddy to like pay for all my special business interest things. If there is somebody,
we can talk.
Let's talk. I'm very fun to watch change over the years because I'm so good. No, sorry. This is not a personal attack. But like, if you want to really feel successful about somebody that you're like supporting, support me. I feel like I have the years of growth to show you. Everything that I do is about taking more steps forward, building the small habits that help conserve our energy so that we can do the hard things, to make the hard choices that take us out of our comfort level. And as a business, it's scary. As a nonprofit, it's even scarier because you're like, does this work with our mission? Is this going to be legal? Is this going to be taxable? That kind of thing. There's so many reasons to be scared. And for us as a small business, especially if you have a strong, stable life already, those plunges, those passion projects, those are what the world needs right now. And I'm not telling you to like be reckless and lose your apartment and lose your life. But if you don't worry that hard about losing those things, sometimes you will lose them, but gain something else. Move into a new space. Like when I was working out of my basement in Seattle for that landlord that I happened to become a friend with who gave me a good deal, you know, like I was scheming. I was like, okay, how do I get more from this? How do I use this to my benefit? Because it's not normal to have such a good opportunity like that. And you got to recognize your opportunities. So when they're there, you can't just take them for granted and act like it's going to be there for you forever, because your moments can pass. Like I said, you never think you're not going to be young anymore until you hit a different age and you're like, oh, I'm definitely not young anymore. I can't do everything that I thought I could do physically. You know, like you are stopped by your body. Your body is your filter of progress here. But that's why I believe in the habits. I believe in the habits, Rebecca. Like, it's not anything revolutionary. It's just how we work as humans. We don't like new things. So in order to get to something new, you have to slowly expose yourself to it over and over and over and over until it's not new. It's just what you want.
What I think is so beautiful, that just as an outsider watching from something as remedial as Instagram, now hearing this incredible story that you have, is what was apparent to me from the beginning of following you was that you're bringing everybody else along with you.
That's my way. That's how I do it.
and that's the thing. You've got some big stuff to figure out. Nobody would have any judgment around like, hey, you're going to start out a small business. You're going to figure out everything you need to do to keep all the income into you so that you can survive, right? And thrive, hopefully, but just even survive. And instead, you're kind of like, yeah, I can do that. Or I can bring everybody else along with me. And I'll figure out the income after that, which is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And be sure not to martyr yourself, because I want you around for a very long time.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, approaching the world this way, approaching my everything this way, even just the way that I like to share skills and knowledge and like post videos of how to do stuff, free everything. I'm always weary of putting a price tag on something to keep it from going to someone without getting money first. That's not something that I'm interested in. I'm not interested in any paywalls at all, but I'm thinking about my end person, the end user of my energy, I guess. You know, like, I'm putting out energy, right? I'm putting out a certain vibration. I'm putting out these ideals and thoughts. And the person that receives it on the lowest end, the furthest away from me, I want them to still feel that hot spark of, we can do this together.
Oh, I can't even think. There, that's it. I mean, we had a mic drop earlier, but that's it. And I think that's beautiful. And I want so much more of that in the arts world and in the entrepreneurial world as well.
I mean, if we can do it in the art world, it can change the entrepreneurial world. We're deeply connected. They watch us. I think that a lot of our culture is about exploiting artists, so they watch us get exploited too. They watch us work for free. They watch us choose careers and lives that don't fulfill us and make us less than. But I think if we provide like a different perspective, that's all it takes. You just have to be the different thing that you want to see, and other people will notice. I feel like my community has rallied around me. Tacoma has been wonderful. I moved here about 4 years ago. We bought this house to make this studio and to have this space. And I feel like if we didn't move to Tacoma, if we stayed in Seattle, this would never have happened.
Yeah.
The way that Tacoma has really embraced me and my ideas for what I want to bring to Tacoma it's just been like why I come up with more ideas. I'm like, oh yeah, you thought that was cool? What about this? What about this aspect? What about this part of it? Like, I'm always doing that in my pottery work too, you know, like a shape is cool, but what about if you touch this bottom part of it? What about if it sits this certain way? And every part of my life, I've used that process, shift it. Like, if you don't like it right now, why are you looking at it in that same way over and over and over again? Why? You literally could walk around and look at it from the back. Like, that's just a reminder I give myself all the time. There's not only one way to see something. And if you're ever in doubt about where your path is leading, you really need a tight crew of honest, truth-speaking cheerleaders. People that you trust, even if they say something that like could crush your heart if a random person said it to you, or if a teacher said it to you, or for like some role model said it to you. Even if they do, you need to be on a level with those personal cheerleaders that you don't hear it that way. You hear it with love and you hear it with sincerity, because we don't need people lying to us all the time about what they think we're doing. We need real, honest communication. So find your people. I have a tight group of critics that are also on my side. You don't have to be mean when you critique, which is another part of our show. I'm like, I'm going to show people what it's like to actually critique well. Like everybody who has done a college art class critique is going to watch our show and be like, I want to work with these potters.
You mean you're not going to do the compliment sandwich? Where I was like, just skip the compliment. I want the critique. Like, I know what you're doing.
I, wasn't lucky enough to receive any compliment sandwiches when I was in school for art. It was very
not good.
I mean, when you're really subjective and you're not aware of your everything, like all your privileges, you haven't unpacked those things, and then you give a critique to someone who sees you more clearly in your cultural web than you will ever see yourself. You can't give a good critique if you aren't seriously trying to connect to a person. If you're just saying something because you think you have to say something in class to get your participation points, please shut up. We don't need those people talking. And if you think that, you need to talk more in class so that you can prove to your professor or whatever that you know your shit or that you're cooler than everybody else, please don't. Just don't.
Right.
No one needs to hear that. You need to sort yourself out and and give a critique that's like looking at the actual thing in front of you, not you looking inside yourself and projecting it
reflecting.
On somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh man, that brings up a whole nother thing, and I've used way more of your time.
I'm happy to talk.
I love it, and I could keep going.
To edit though, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. We have to do another round. I'm just going to give up on Hendrickson's nails in the background for the end here. We're just going to embrace the fact that you and I both have dogs, and that's life.
It's probably okay. Maybe you might be able to like tone it down in post.
We'll figure it out. We've got to keep this going. We're gonna plan another time.
Okay.
There's so many things to unpack and so many things that I feel
we haven't even talked about the show, really. So
I know. There's also so many subjects that I feel like don't get touched upon in the arts world, either because people haven't experienced them and they're clueless because they are living in privilege, or a million other reasons, but probably mostly that one.
Yes, that's it's a prominent problem right now.
Yeah.
And it's just a read. It's not like you have to do something about it right now after you listen to this podcast, But it's just like you have to really look at it. You have to really look at it. And if somebody is coming to you and saying, hey, I think you might be in a place of privilege when you're talking about this certain thing, that's a beautiful gift. That's a beautiful gift. That is something you say thank you for. You don't have to respond right away, but like if somebody's willing to go there with you, even if they're a stranger, it's like, okay, I should take stock, really do a thorough assess. It's not guaranteed that you'll see the problem. That's why you need your critical cheerleaders.
It's an opportunity, and that's why you need a community. I mean, to bring it all full circle.
Right. Yeah. It's an opportunity, and the more you seek out those opportunities and actually embody them, that's the way forward. I can't be convinced otherwise. It's a little step like that. Very easy, a small habit that we can just creep towards our goals.
You just brought it all full circle right there. I love it. Before I forget, where can people come to learn more about this beautiful community that you are creating? see your work, wherever you want to send people on the interwebs?
Oh, my website's a good place. It's a home base. It's feepottery.com. I mean, I'm very open on Instagram. Like, I post about my life, I post about my pottery, I post about my business ideas, I post everything there. So if you really want to get to know me, I feel like I'm very honest on there. Just send me a message.
And I will link all of that up in the show notes. And I'll tell people where the show notes are at the end of the episode.
Yeah, that we still have to record half of. When do you want to do it?
Oh, we have to. We'll figure that out.
Okay.
Absolutely, because there's so much I want to dig into. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I hope you take some notes and keep me on track next time, because I can just
I've got notes. I've got notes for the next time.
Excellent.
I appreciate your time, giving so freely. I so appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I love talking to you.
I don't know if I can say that wraps up episode 216 as much as that puts a pause on this conversation, because there are still so many more subjects Fee and I could have dug deeper on, including the fact that we didn't even get to discuss their newest venture, the Clay Challenge. Fee is undertaking the audacious project of filming a pottery challenge game show, minus the eliminations, and plus a whole heck of a lot of deep, heartfelt, supportive, life-giving artist conversations, and of course, in community. They're in the middle of crowdfunding for some of the many costs this endeavor will take at the moment. So be sure to go visit Fee on Instagram at Fee Pottery. That's PHIPOTTERY to learn more and donate. I'll be taking a bit of an unplanned season break after next week's episode. So if you want to be sure to be alerted when new episodes air, then visit makersplaybook.com/newsletter and sign up for the email list. Doing so will also add you to our monthly free photo tips list, where I deep dive on many of the most frequently asked photography questions, specifically for makers. Like why shooting on all white backgrounds is so dang hard, and why what kind of camera you use really doesn't matter as much as you think it does. Once again, visit makersplaybook.com/newsletter to sign up for the list. All right, my friends, until next week, go get back to making your dreams a reality, because together, we've got this.